What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's transfer tips for Game Week 30. So I'm going to go through some of the popular players people are looking to move into their squad or take out and give my opinion whether they're good moves or not. And we've got a quick update about the FA Cup and what that might mean for blanks and doubles to start us off. So let's get into it. So let's start with the FA Cup quarter-final draw and what that means from an FPL point of view. So Southampton are at home to Arsenal, Chelsea are at home to Port Vale, Man City are playing Liverpool at home, and then West Ham are playing Leeds at home. So as a reminder, whichever teams get through to the FA Cup semi-finals will have their game postponed in Game Week 34, and that will need to be rearranged elsewhere. And for the most part, if that happens, it will get rearranged into Game Week 33, creating a double game week. Now, it's worth saying the fixture gurus like Tana Nadeem, Ben Krellin, and I think even James from Planet FPL is predicting the same thing. Whoever gets through to the semi-finals from West Ham and Leeds, because they're not in Europe and neither are their opponents in Game Week 34, that match will probably just stay in Game Week 34. So if you have a quick look at the matches that are scheduled that week, Leeds are due to play Bournemouth away in Game Week 34. West Ham are due to play Everton at home. Both those matches are scheduled for Saturday the 25th of April. Whichever team gets through to the semi-final, that match will probably just get moved to the midweek of Game Week 34. Because there's no Europe or anything to worry about. So as it stands, whoever gets through from West Ham and Leeds probably won't create a double game week. On the other hand, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City and Liverpool are all still in Europe. So as long as they stay in Europe after the next round, that will almost certainly cause doubles in Game Week 33. For what it's worth, let's say Chelsea beat Port Vale, which obviously they're very likely to do. It's a really favourable draw, and they get through to the semi-finals, but they lose to PSG in the next round of Europe or Champions League. There is a chance that Chelsea game from 34 just won't move, but it still could. Okay, so the only one the fixture guys are predicting probably won't move is West Ham, Leeds, whoever gets through there. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Basically, we're not going to know for sure until these matches have been played and we see what happens in Europe. This is always the problem in FPL. You wait for more information and you do get some info, which is useful, but you've still got to wait for even more later on. So as it stands, Arsenal heavy favourites to beat Southampton, Chelsea heavy favourites to beat Port Vale, and obviously one of Man City or Liverpool will go through to the semi-finals. So we've got a good chance of having 6 teams doubling in Game Week 33. Man City will be favourites because they're at home, but obviously that's a difficult match. So let's say Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City all win their games. What will the double in Game Week 33 look like? This. So Arsenal will have Man City away, Newcastle at home. Newcastle will have Bournemouth at home, Arsenal away. Chelsea will have Man United at home, Brighton away. Brighton will have Spurs away, Chelsea at home. And then Man City will have Arsenal at home, Burnley away. And then Burnley will have Forest away, Man City at home. One other thing to note, this prediction is having the Burnley match against Man City from 34 brought forward to 33. That still means that Man City Palace needs to go somewhere else. That will probably be double game week 36. So if Man City beat Liverpool in the FA Cup quarterfinals, get through to the semi-finals, their game in 34 will probably get brought forward to 33. The game against Palace will move to game week 36. That's the most likely thing to happen, which means if you saved your triple captain, there is very good chance of there being another double game week to use it in. Now, if this is the double, you've got 6 teams. There's good potential to have a decent bench boost. But obviously the current favourite strategy a lot of people have been talking about, myself included, is to wildcard in Game Week 32 to set up for the bench boost in 33, which in theory sounds quite nice. The only problem is, if these are the teams that double, let me just go to Game Week 32. Let's say you want to go triple Man City, triple Chelsea. They play each other in Game Week 32. Which is not necessarily ideal, right? So wildcard with 3 Chelsea, 3 Man City, and they're playing each other. Now, for Arsenal, it's not so bad because they got Bournemouth at home. For Newcastle, they get Palace away, and Brighton have got Burnley away. So I still think wildcard 32, bench boost 33 is probably looking like quite a good strategy. But what most of you will find, if you haven't already looked, is that your team in 32 is going to look pretty good anyway. So let's say you've carried 2 Arsenal players through the Game Week 31 blank. They've got Bournemouth at home. Any of you with like Thiago, Sharda, Utara, Kelleher, they've got Everton at home. So that's a pretty good fixture. If you carry any of your Palace players through, they've got Newcastle at home. Elliot Anderson, Gibbs-White, they've got Villa at home. And then if you've got like in Burmo, Bruno Fernandes, they've got Leeds at home. So your game week 32 team is actually going to look pretty good. So I'm not saying that wildcard 32 is now a bad strategy, because it's not, but it has been slightly weakened by the fact that Chelsea and Man City obviously playing each other. So potentially it might be worth just working through 32, free hitting in 33 instead. And then if you've got your wildcard left, save that for afterwards. So you could wildcard 34 or 35 and then bench boost soon afterwards. The reality is, these fixtures for the quarterfinals, they don't get played until just before game week 32. So unless you're willing to lock in a strategy right now, which is not a problem, basically the gap, let me just go back to game week 31. Game week 31 deadline is Friday the 20th of March. Game week 32 deadline is Friday the 10th of April. And the FA Cup games get played just before that. I think it's the previous. So you have international break, then FA Cup matches. So you're not going to know just before 32. So if you're not willing to lock in a strategy, it's going to be difficult to activate your wildcard straight after the game week 31 deadline, because depending on the results, you might not want a wildcard in 32. So it's a difficult one. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do yet, but I think as long as there's not a ton of price changes that are going to massively impact my team, I'm hoping to just wait until the quarterfinals are played and then decide on strategy. Who knows? Players could get injured or anything. And then all of a sudden, free hit 33 might look a little bit better. Because obviously, if you wildcard for these teams that are doubling in 33, you then need to carry them for the rest of the season, which is not necessarily a terrible thing. Like Arsenal have got pretty good fixtures for the rest of the season. I mean, even Brighton, they've got 35, Newcastle away, Wolves at home, Leeds away, Man United at home for the rest of the season. But do you want like double or triple Brighton? I mean, no one's looking at Brighton players right now. There's like rotation. Defensively, are they there? You might want one or two for the double, but I don't know if you want to carry them for the rest of the season. Most people are not going to want Burnley players outside of Dubravka. For Newcastle, for example, they have got Brighton at home, Forest away, West Ham at home, Fulham away to end the season. So probably not too bad. But obviously there's other teams and players that you might want as well. So I wish I could sit here and tell you the exact best strategy, but I think it's still kind of a little bit open. But I will say again, most people's teams in 32 are going to look pretty good. And so you might not want a wildcard into a worse team. Like for that to be effective, the bench boost has to be amazing in 33. And right now I'm not so sure about that. Like I still think bench boost 33 is probably the best week. But when you're thinking about it overall with all your chips, to wildcard into a worse team just to bench boost in 33, not necessarily ideal. The other thing to kind of say, just to kind of round this piece off, is the more transfers you can save, the better, I think. Because let's say you free hit 33 and then wildcard 34. While 34 is a blank, and obviously if Man City are blanking that week, but then they're doubling in 36, you're going to want to bring some players in or have them on the bench. You might need transfers. So the more transfers you can save, probably the better. Hopefully that was in some way helpful. Again, just before game week 32 is when we're going to know exactly who's through to the semi-finals. But based on the draw, Arsenal, Chelsea, very likely. And then it's just one of Man City and Liverpool. Again, really, I keep saying really quickly, we're nearly done. Liverpool, by the way, play Palace at home in 34. So if they were to beat Man City, you would have Liverpool versus Palace at home and Everton away, which wouldn't be that bad. And then Palace would double with Liverpool away and West Ham at home. So that would also be quite good. So again, if Palace and Liverpool play each other, like let's say, for example, you do the Haaland Salah switch this week and you get Ekitike as well. So for me, that would mean Van Dijk, Salah, Ekitike. You get to game week 32, Liverpool have got a good home fixture against Fulham, and then they double in 33 because they've beaten Man City. All of a sudden, you might not need to wildcard all those players in. So it's still a little bit up in the air. And I think the problem with the draw is, yes, Man City will be favourites, but could Liverpool go and beat them away from home? Could happen, right? So we're just going to have to wait and see, unfortunately. So let's talk about two players that won't double or blank for the rest of the season, and that's Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White. Lots of people thinking about bringing them in this week. This is what their fixture run looks like. Fulham at home this week, followed by Spurs away and Villa at home. In double game week 33, they'll play Burnley at home. And in blank game week 34, they'll play Sunderland away. Sunderland out of the FA Cup now, so that match will definitely be on. The remaining fixtures then Chelsea away, Newcastle at home, Man United away to take you up to game week 37. If you're looking for a cheap midfielder, I still like Elliot Anderson, but I think it's worth saying people are only bringing him in because he scored last week, and it's not something you should expect that much. His expected goals per 90 so far this season, 0.06. He's mostly in for defensive contributions. And that's not a problem because he averages over 14 per start, and he picks those points up fairly regularly. He often plays 90 minutes, or pretty much always plays 90 minutes. So he is a good pick. But don't buy him because he scored a goal last week. I will say, especially for people that have already used a few chips like wildcard and or free hit, I quite like the idea of going for a cheap Forest player because when you get to 33, let's say you can't set up for the perfect bench boost or whatever it might be because you've used a few chips, even though they don't double, they're still playing Burnley at home. And then the following week, it's Sunderland away in the blank. So I still quite like Elliot Anderson for that reason. He's probably a little bit less interesting for people that have got all their chips because he's not that explosive or anything like that, but he does consistently tick over. So I think for the next few weeks, he looks quite good. Gibbs-White has also done well recently. Worth saying, we're not quite sure who's on penalties at the moment because Gibbs-White has missed a couple. Igor Jesus is not always starting. So it could still be Gibbs-White, might be Elliot Anderson. We'll have to wait and see. I just always think that Gibbs-White's a little bit expensive at 7.3 million. And I know money is not super tight at the moment, so maybe you can afford him. I don't know, like 0.25 expected goals per night is not that bad, but he's not all that creative. He's not great for DEFCONs. Again, you could make the case for him because the fixtures are quite good. You've got that decent match in 33, plays in 34. But I just think there's better options elsewhere. So if you're looking for a Forest midfielder, I like Anderson for the price, how consistent he is. Gibbs-White's okay, but I can never get that excited about him. Although if you could guarantee me he was still on penalties, I'd quite like him, I think. So if you want a cheap midfielder that's not Elliot Anderson, consider Marcus Tavernier at just 5.3 million. He's also on penalties at the moment with no Clivert available for Bournemouth. And his underlying numbers are just pretty good, especially for the price. So 0.24 non-penalty expected goals per 90 this season. Very similar to Gibbs-White, only he's 2 million cheaper. And he's a little bit more creative as well. And he came so close to getting a decent FPL return last game week. Had that happened, that price would have shot up. So he has got the potential to do really well for that price. I think with him, it's a short-term option. So Burnley away in 30, Man United at home in game week 31, which we know is going to be a blank game week for some teams. Like Man United at home, obviously not as good as Burnley, but Bournemouth will cause them some problems. And Tavernier will likely be at the heart of that. And obviously he's on penalty. So he doesn't even need to have a good game. Someone wins a penalty in that match. Tavernier puts it away. Obviously happy days from an FPL point of view. And you get the Burnley game before that. After that though, Arsenal away 32. Newcastle away in 33. Doesn't look quite so good. So I think if you're set on wildcard 32 or you think there's a very good chance you're going to do it, then I really like Tavernier. If not, I would just check what your team's going to look like in game week 32. So, for example, I've got Harry Wilson in my team. We'll have to wait and see if he's available for 30 and 31. They've got Liverpool away in 32. So the idea of me not wildcarding that week looks a little bit worse because I own Wilson. But he's the only real one in my attack that's got a bad fixture that week. So I've still kind of left my options open. If you've already got like a bunch of Fulham players playing Liverpool, you've already got a couple of Bournemouth playing Arsenal in 32, and you're thinking about adding Tavernier and you're not sure if you're going to wildcard that week, I'd maybe look elsewhere. But honestly, for 5.3 million, that is just incredible value. So even if you played him for the next two and then had to play him against Arsenal away, it's not ideal. But it's not completely terrible either. So Tavernier is just a really nice pick at the moment. So it's a similar conversation with Senesi and Hill if you're looking for a new defender for the next couple of game weeks. Senesi's now up to 5 million. James Hill is 4.2. Burnley away obviously looks very good this week. Then you got Man United at home in game week 31, which is not the perfect fixture. I wouldn't expect Bournemouth to get a clean sheet in that game. But both of these players are very good for defensive contributions. Senesi has averaged 11.89 per start and James Hill is 10.92. And you only have to hit 10 as a defender to get the additional 2 points. So that looks quite good. And although I would expect Man United to score in 31, I wouldn't expect like 4 or 5. I don't expect Bournemouth to get smashed or anything like that. Man United haven't played particularly well in the last 3 or 4 games. So it's not that bad of a fixture for Bournemouth, but I wouldn't expect a clean sheet. Now, I think a couple of weeks ago, if I'd been looking at a defender for 30 and 31 only, I'm not sure I would have gone for Bournemouth because of the Man United game, but I'm not sure you can buy Joachim Andersen right now because he got benched in game week 29. Now, I am pretty confident he will come back into the team and be first choice again, like he already was. But it's not a complete guarantee. I think if you want to buy Andersen, you've got to wait to see if he plays against Forest and then pick him up in 31 against Burnley at home. But that's not great if you need a defender this week. Then you look at Brentford defenders. To me, that's just a bit of a headache. Like, Coyote's not bad because you know he'll play, but he's not great for defensive contribution. So you're relying on attacking returns. I'm not sure are necessarily going to be there. Had I picked a Brentford defender last week, I would have said that Ayer looks the most nailed, but then he got benched. He only came on and played about 70 minutes because Rico Henry picked up an injury. Now, you might say, well, that injury, because it's a bad one, means that Collins, Vandenberg and Ayer could just keep playing. But then if you look at the FA Cup yesterday against West Ham, it was Lewis Potter and Coyote fullbacks, and then Ayer and Collins. So Vandenberg stepped out. So I just think the Collins, Ayer, Vandenberg, the three for the two centre-back positions, when you've got a blank game week and no bench, I just don't know if it's worth messing around with that. So I just think Andersen and Brentford defenders, they're just too much of a headache, in which case I would just go for Senesi or Hill. Now, again, if it's a very short-term move, I would probably go Senesi. His attacking numbers have been slightly better than Hill over the season, and he's better for defensive contributions per start. Now, obviously, the only thing to say about that is that's based over the season. When Hill and Senesi have played together recently, Hill has hit it more times. It's whether you take that small sample versus the bigger one over the season. I think for the next two, I would go for Senesi if I had the money. But if you're thinking longer term, he is 2 yellow cards away from hitting a 2-game suspension. Now, as long as he gets through 30 and 31 without yellow cards in each, he'll be fine. But it's just worth noting whether it's worth taking that risk. And also, if you are thinking long term, I'd probably just go for the cheaper option to free up 0.8 million. So again, if you're looking to wildcard in 32, I'd probably prefer Senesi just about, and we're talking like minimal reasons for that, right? Otherwise, just take the cheaper guy if you're thinking long term, or if money might be tight for your moves. And I think on current info, I just think if you want someone for 30 and 31, when you factor in that Nico O'Reilly's going to blank in 31, etc., I think Senesi or Hill over Andersen and Brentford, just on current info. In 31 itself, if you were just buying one that week and Joachim Andersen plays against Forest, then you just buy Andersen for Burnley at home. But for the two, I think you just take the Bournemouth defender instead. So the fourth most transferred in defender this week is James Tarkowski. Nearly 60,000 people have brought him in after his 15-pointer in game week 29. I don't know if many people watching this video are thinking about getting him, but just in case you are, I'll keep this really brief. It's Arsenal away, followed by Chelsea at home, then Brentford away, then Liverpool at home, next 4. Yes, he's quite good for defensive contributions. Yes, he was probably due a goal or two, to be fair, given what's happened this season. He's had so many shots cleared off the line and stuff like that. But ultimately, clean sheets are still the bread and butter. There's not many coming up. You should not be looking to buy James Tarkowski, especially at 5.7. He's not even that cheap. You need better fixtures than what Everton have got. So now Man City have got through to the FA Cup quarter-finals after beating Newcastle. We now know they're almost guaranteed to blank in game week 31. I think the only way that Man City Palace game can go back into 31 now is if Man City and Palace both go out at the next round of Europe. And obviously Palace will be heavy favourites to go through. City could beat Real Madrid as well. So it's now looking for Haaland, like West Ham away, which is right in the middle of the two Real Madrid games, then a blank in 31, then Chelsea away in 32. Now, if Man City beat Liverpool in the quarterfinals, we know there's a very good chance Man City would double in 33. So you would want Haaland for that. But for the next 3 game weeks, I think there is reason to think about selling him, because he's no good to you in 31. The fixture in 32 is not great anyway. And if you're sat there with your free hit and or wild card, you're very likely, especially if you've got both, by the way, you're likely to either wild card in 32 or free hit in 33, so you can just get him back. So I think there's every reason to consider selling Erling Haaland. If you think he gets reduced minutes against West Ham, followed by a blank, followed by Chelsea away, you could take him on. basically. There's an opportunity there. I am not saying he will definitely get reduced minutes against West Ham. I'm just saying there's an opportunity here, potentially, to sell him to put that money into midfield instead. And I think because he's not done well recently, people have sold him. He's down to 14.6 million. You're probably not going to lose that much value on him depending on when you brought him in. So for me, for example, if I go to the transfer page and click list view, I got Haaland for 14.2. He's now down to 14.6, so I can sell him for 14.4. So if I need to buy him back and his price doesn't change, it's going to cost me 0.2 million. I think that's probably worth it for the opportunity selling Haaland potentially gives you. By the way, if you're sat there thinking, what are you on about? I'm just going to captain Haaland against West Ham. It's a great fixture. Absolutely fine. This is just for someone that wants to maybe do things a little bit different, especially if you've got all your chips left. If you don't, there's more reason to hold on to Haaland in case he doubles in 33. And ultimately, playing him against Chelsea away is not that bad. Now, where do you spend the money? One player you could look at is Cole Palmer. Newcastle at home in 30, Everton away in 31. Then it is City at home in 32. But then again, Chelsea have got a very good chance to double in 33. So if you've got no chips, let's just say it's Newcastle at home, Everton away. So he's got a fixture in blank 31, plays City at home in 32, then a double in 33. That doesn't look too bad. And also, Palmer's minutes recently have been quite good. Now, that might change given they've got PSG coming up. You know, Palmer might play great minutes in both of those Champions League games, maybe a slight reduction against Newcastle at home. But if you look at recent matches, 84, 85, 74, 90, 60, 90, missed the Palace game through injury, then 90, 74, 90. The minutes have been quite good. So he looks pretty nailed. Fitness doesn't seem to be an issue. I think he said himself he's not 100% match fit yet, but he doesn't seem to still be struggling with that groin problem on penalties, etc. So I don't mind that. And the other one to consider, which I haven't created a graphic for, but we'll just discuss him anyway, is Salah. Now, I mentioned this last week when we thought Haaland was maybe a doubt going into game week 29. People were not happy about it whatsoever. Salah gets his goal against Wolves, gets a 9-pointer. Had I brought him in and captained him, that would have been pretty decent, right? And then I'd be sat here with Spurs at home next. Now, we've got to be careful with Spurs at home because, yes, they've done rubbish this season. They haven't looked great. They were really poor against Palace for the most part. I don't want to make it sound like Spurs is as good as Burnley as a fixture, but it's still pretty good right now. So could you go for Salah, Spurs at home followed by Brighton away, and then Fulham at home in 32? I honestly, I am so tempted to make that move. I'm going to talk about it in my team selection video, but basically you get Spurs at home, differential captain. Although I suspect a lot of people want to go Ekitike, which is fair. Brighton away in 31, so you've got a fixture. If you get to 32 and you don't want a wild card, Fulham at home is better than Chelsea away, which is what Haaland has. And then if Liverpool beat Man City in the FA Cup, potential double in 33. And if not, if you've got chips left, you can either free hit that week, in which case you get Salah back for Palace at home in 34, or you're wild carding anyway. So you just get rid of him. So I think there's reason to think about selling Haaland. I'm not saying it's an essential move. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm not saying Haaland's bad for West Ham away. None of those things apply. It's your FPL team. You can do what you like. I just think there's a potential opportunity there, especially if you've got chips left. So let's quickly talk about Florian Wirtz, because I know some of you would have kept hold of him through his injury in game weeks 28 and 29. He was in the squad for Liverpool against Wolves in the FA Cup. He was on the bench. He came on and played about 20 minutes. So that's a pretty positive sign going forward. I'd be quite surprised if he doesn't start against Spurs in game week 30. So I think if you've kept hold of him, then you just hold him for Spurs at home. It's a pretty good fixture. He's a pretty big differential, and he should be in that team. I think Liverpool just function a lot better with him because of his creativity, and his numbers over the season are starting to look pretty healthy. Not the actual goals and assists, which I know is what we want, but his underlying numbers have looked good, and at some point you would hope that will convert into some proper FPL points, and he's very good for bonus when he does get an attack and return. So if you've got him, I would keep him. Would I bring him in? Potentially. I'm not... Let me get my words out here. Because he got 20 minutes off the bench, I'm pretty confident that he starts against Spurs, and the minutes should be pretty good. But if you don't own him, it's a slightly different decision, because the minutes could be more limited because he is just off the back of a small injury. So you could go there if you've got 8.3 million to spend. I don't mind it, but I think I would personally just wait and see what happens in that Spurs game, which isn't ideal because that is a better fixture than Brighton away. But I just have slight doubts. But if I had him, obviously those slight doubts are still there, but not enough to sell him. It's completely different conversation. And I know some people will say that Wirtz is just a better pick than Salah. I'm not sure I agree with that. Like, Salah's underlying numbers are pretty poor this season compared to what we've come to expect from him, but they're still not that bad. Better than Wirtz, and he's on penalties as well. So if money's not an object and you're picking Wirtz or Salah for Spurs at home, Brighton away, I'm definitely going Salah over Wirtz. But I still think if you've got Wirtz, you probably want to keep hold of him. Let's stick to Liverpool and talk about Ekitike next. Is he still worth bringing in? As we know, Spurs at home in 30 looks quite good. Guaranteed fixture in 31 against Brighton away. Then it's Fulham at home, Everton away, Palace at home, Man United away. If Liverpool don't end up beating City in the FA Cup, then they've got pretty good fixtures the whole way through. If they do, that match against Palace in 34 gets postponed. Then they have a double in 33. So the fixture run looks pretty good. I still think Ekitike is definitely worth considering. I think because of the absolute guaranteed minutes with Thiago and penalties and no Europe, I would still just about prefer him. But it's worth saying Brentford can double now, which also means they won't blank either. But if you're someone with a lot of chips left, you want players that are going to double eventually or that have a chance of doing that. If you've used all your chips, then I think Thiago is pretty great because the fixtures you've got coming up from him. If I just bring him up here, let me just go to my team because he's already in. Wolves at home, Leeds away next 2. Then it's Everton at home, Fulham at home, Man United away, West Ham at home. So he's pretty good all the way up until 35. Yes, you have no double in 33, but that also means you've got a fixture in 34. So if you're limited on chips, I think Thiago is slightly better. Now, if Liverpool lose to Man City in the FA Cup, Liverpool also have pretty good fixtures all the way through, but it's guaranteed with Thiago. And even if it was like a 2-week punt, 30 and 31, I still just about prefer Thiago. So that's probably where I would go. But if you're looking for another forward that's not Thiago, not Haaland, Ekitike is definitely worth considering. The big question now is, and one that I've kind of ignored over the last few weeks, is should you just buy João Pedro instead? Let's say it's a one-off decision. You're either buying João Pedro or Ekitike. Which one do you go for? I think if you're still not sure exactly what your chip strategy is. And by the way, I'm still not sure at the time of recording. I really don't know if I'm still going to wildcard 32 or just free hit 33. Chelsea do play City at home in 32. Now, João Pedro is playing extremely well right now. His underlying numbers in terms of goal threat over the season have now surpassed Ekitike. So he's playing really well as that number 9 for Chelsea. Does it really matter if he plays Man City at home? Maybe not. But again, I would prefer Liverpool's fixtures overall, next 3. So I think my preference is to go for Ekitike, but it is worth saying it's more likely that Chelsea will double in 33 than Liverpool. So it really depends how you're going to play things. Like if you've got no chips left, or let's say you've got one, right? Let's say you've only got your free hit or your wild card, so you're going to play up to the double in 33, and then either free hit in 34 or wild card 34. João Pedro is probably the better option to go for. Because you have Newcastle at home, Everton away, City at home, and then a pretty good chance of a double in 33. And in 34, you can either free hit him out or wildcard him out if you need to. So it really depends on what position you're in. So, yeah, I would say no chips whatsoever. Thiago is probably the best. Next 2 fixtures, I prefer Ekitike. I go Thiago, then Ekitike, then João Pedro. If you've only got 1 chip left, free hit or wildcard, you could argue that João Pedro is slightly better. Either way, all 3 are really good picks. I think João Pedro has overperformed a little bit, mostly in terms of the assists he's got, but goal threat is just decent. And you can't even use the Europe factor as a reason not to go for João Pedro because Liverpool are also still in Europe. And obviously Ekitike's got to play a lot because there's no Isak. So it's like, I almost think it's like a bit of a coin flip between the two. I think if I buy a new forward this week, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go Ekitike. And also, João Pedro's ownership's just getting so high now, I kind of almost want to take it on. The problem with doing that now is I think he's just a genuinely pretty good pick. So it was easier, earlier on in the season when I thought he was quite good but not great, it was easier to ignore him. But now he's looking pretty damn good. So it's close. Either way, Ekitike good. And if you've got Ekitike, do not sell him. Not for Thiago, not for João Pedro. And just to quickly talk about Nico O'Reilly, who missed game week 29 through injury. He did play the full match against Newcastle in the FA Cup, so he's back, he's available. I would expect him to start against West Ham away. It's not a guarantee because, again, that match is right in between the 2 Champions League games against Real Madrid. There could be some rotation in that match. But I think if you've got Nico O'Reilly, he's such a good pick if he plays, that you've probably just got to keep him and hope that he starts that match and put him into your 11. If you don't have Nico O'Reilly, I just wouldn't buy him. Because after West Ham away, it's a blank, then it's Chelsea away, then it's Arsenal at home. Doesn't look quite so good. If you're wildcarding in 32 and they have a double in 33, then of course Nico O'Reilly will be fully on your radar, etc. But we can come to that when we get to that point in the season. Right now, I just don't think he's worth buying. But if you're an owner, good news, played in the FA Cup, probably a good chance he starts against West Ham. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. I'll be back tomorrow with the Game Week preview. I'll catch you then.